Marietta and the entire Mid-Ohio Valley. You're watching WTAP News at 11.
Americans who depend on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program to feed themselves and their families are expected to receive at least some of their November benefits, but how much assistance they'll get and when they'll get it is unclear. Our Chase Campbell visited an Ohio food bank to learn about what they're doing to navigate a spike in demand.
With SNAP benefits delayed, the Southeast Ohio Foodbank, which helps stock dozens of food pantries throughout 10 Southeast Ohio counties, is contending with an influx in demand.
We're seeing more people reaching out for help, and many of them for the first time. So we know that the impact of these delays are already pretty widespread.
As they've awaited November 1st, Food Bank Director Alicia Miklos says they've been taking what steps they can to prepare.
We're ordering supplemental food with the flexible grant funds that we have. We're working directly with our member food pantries to make sure that they have all the supplies that they need in addition to that supplemental food, and we're making sure that we get the information out to people facing hunger in our area so that they know where to go.
While they do what they can now, Miklos stresses that food banks can't make up for the loss of SNAP in the long term.
For every one meal provided by the food bank network, SNAP provides 9 meals. So it's just going to be really difficult for food banks and pantries to keep up with this increased spike in demand that we're seeing, and that causes a lot of concern for food banks across Ohio.
Miklos says as the delays continue, the more than 61,000 SNAP recipients in the Southeast Ohio Foodbank's region are in an increasingly dire situation.
The delays that they're experiencing are putting strain on their budgets, on their household. They're having to make tough decisions like between paying for food or medicine.
That situation is particularly concerning for Ohio's most vulnerable populations.
62% of SNAP households in Ohio have children in the family, and 42% have either elderly or disabled people living in the household. So we know that it's going to be our most vulnerable citizens who are going to be struggling as this SNAP delay continues.
22-year-old Emily Renat is one of those SNAP recipients. She's also a WIC recipient with a 9-month-old daughter. She was particularly concerned about WIC early in the shutdown when it wasn't clear if those benefits would be distributed.
With the WIC, as I am human, I can survive off water. But as of her, she needs the nutrients and all that other types of stuff as she is growing. So that kind of stressed me out.
Receiving WIC benefits at least ensures Renat's daughter won't go hungry, but the lingering uncertainty about SNAP remains.
Right now, we just hope and pray that it hits, and if it doesn't, then you just figure it out at that point. I would say, as of right now, I have a Propo app, and it says that it doesn't know they're going to be all delayed until the government opens back up. So that's pretty stressful, and feeding myself, but at the same time, as long as my daughter's fed, it doesn't really matter about me in this moment.
Renat says she depends on the Hawking-Athens Perry Community Action Market, a food pantry in Logan not far from the Southeast Ohio Foodbank's warehouse.
I depend on this place a lot, every 2 weeks to just come get some food for myself, and it's nice that they do this for people.
The market has felt the pressures of the SNAP delay itself. Food pantry coordinator Jace Jackson said their shelves are emptying quicker than usual, and in just the past week, they've helped 88 new families who've never used the pantry before. In Logan, Chase Campbell, WTAP News.